Man, it's windy.
I know.
Hey y'all, and welcome to the Sew Homey Podcast. This is going to be my first episode. I'm Abby, and I'm out here in the Weminuche Wilderness, which is in central Colorado. It's close to Lake City, or if you're familiar with Creed, it's also nearest the Rio Grande Reservoir, which is just right where we came in. And me and my dad, we've been hiking here for a few hours now, probably like going on 4, I would say. And we've just enjoyed it. It's a great day, and I just wanted to start a podcast. I thought it'd be fun if, it's perfect here. The weather is great, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun if I just started one so that you get a behind-the-scenes look at what I'm up to and what I do when I'm not crocheting. So my newest project is this hat, actually, and I'm coming out with a tutorial. And I'll let you guys know whenever that's ready. I'm not sure if this is gonna come out before that or not, but yeah, it's about this hat, and I really love it. I used 2 strands of a number 1 weight yarn, and it made it a really nice thickness, which I don't wanna take it off because it'd be scary. My hair is stuck to my head. It's a big knot, but yeah, it's a nice hat. It was really cold this morning. It's a little chilly now, but it keeps my head really warm, and I love the ribbed knit look. It's actually crocheted, but I'll give a lot more information in my video where I actually go through the tutorial for it. So I think I'm gonna end it here. It's too windy, so thank you guys for joining. So I rewatched the intro that you actually just watched, and I was in the editing phase for this podcast episode, and I realized that I didn't talk about the hat like hardly at all. You got to see it on my head, but I didn't really talk much about it. So I wanted to dedicate this portion of the podcast to just talking about the hat and how it's made and just your expectations for the pattern itself. So it's pretty obvious that I made it back from the wilderness. I'm in my apartment now. It's a few weeks later that I'm filming this, so I'm not sure when I'm gonna publish it, but it's probably gonna be like maybe 3 weeks since I've been in the wilderness. But update on the pattern, it is written, it's sitting on my computer waiting for me to proofread it one more time, and I need photographs of my hat so that I can put those into the placeholders that I made in the pattern, and then it's ready for release. So the pattern is really just waiting for the tutorial. My blog post is already written, and I'm waiting for the video to be done. But anyway, so that's the status on the pattern. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit more about the hat and how it's constructed, because it does have a unique element to it. So since then I've made actually 3 hats. I had to test them, and I might just give them as Christmas presents, which is September. So yeah, that's a little ahead, but anyway. So first of all, I used this yarn actually that's behind me and above me, which you can't see, but this is what it looks like. And for this hat, I used these 2 colors, and it's Yarn Bee, pigment and fiber, and then this is Coconut Grove. And I did suggest this in the pattern. I used that. It's a number 1 weight, so it's super fine, and it had a unique blend, fiber blend. It's 60% acrylic, 20% wool, and then 20% nylon. I don't know, that's not one that I've really seen like ever, but it intrigued me because if you saw that orange sticker at Hobby Lobby, it was reduced to $1.99 and regularly $7.99 at the time that this podcast is being filmed. I guarantee you there's no more of these in the clearance section. I've been by Hobby Lobby since I first purchased these, and unfortunately the clearance section is completely sold out. There aren't any more that are at the $2 price, but that's why I initially used this yarn for my hat, because I just bought so much of it because it was such a great deal. Like, you get 630 yards, and it's 6 different colors. So yeah, you can mix and match. I have a lot more plans with this as well that you can use. But anyway, in the pattern, I do give another suggestion. If you want to use a DK weight yarn, that's also acceptable. I give instructions for both. I've tested both, and they both work out really well. You get very similar results too. The DK is just a little bit thicker, but it's still a great weight for a hat. So if you don't want to spend $7.99, because you're going to need several of these, just any number 1 weight yarn, held double is going to work. Just check your gauge. So that's a little bit about the yarn. So since it's such a fine weight, I want to add this. So since it's such a fine weight yarn, it's really small. I held 2 strands together the whole time that I was crocheting so that it created a thicker hat and it goes faster. But what was also really fun is I have another example, this one, which it looks white, but it does have a pinkish tint to it. So this pink one held with this white color, and yeah, it just creates a really cool effect, which with the lighting it looks white. So I'll have to take a picture so you can actually see the pink in it. But yeah, that's what was fun. I got to experiment with a lot of that. You can play with the different colors. It was my way of using up more yarn without just depleting every single color that I purchased. So anyway, yeah, it was fun. So I would highly recommend that you play with the yarn choices. If you just have a 1 weight with, you know, with a, I don't know, with white and then say gray, which actually I have a better example for you of what effect. Let me find it. Okay, I have a bad habit of my yarn getting tangled, so you can't see that. But yeah, anyway. So I played with this, this sample was going to be a hat, but unfortunately I did not buy enough of it. So this one's just sitting here. But if you can see, there's gray and white that's mixed together. So I used 2 separate colors, this gray and this white. And this is the effect that you get by using 2 different colors, and you hold both of them together as you crochet. And you can't tell that it's 2 strands, but you get a really cool color from it without purchasing just one, you know, without purchasing a yarn that is variegated or it has that color tone. So it's a lot of fun to play with. So I highly recommend that you do that for this pattern. If you use a number 1 weight yarn, but with a DK weight, do the same thing. I did hold DK double-stranded, and I got very similar results. So this is the one that I actually made in the tutorial. It's a baby size, so this would not fit my head, but it's a baby size, and it's thicker, so it's a little bit more sturdy, but you still get a nice weight. So you still get a nice hat out of it. It's just a little bit thicker than what you get with the number 1 weight yarn. So that's pretty much the yarn and what you can expect whenever you make the hats. I hope that made sense about the whole double-stranded and the color thing. It was a lot of fun to experiment with, so I do highly recommend that you play with the yarns that you have on hand. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with crocheting hats or if you're familiar with knitting hats, whatever is your forte, but there are hats that you can make without making a circle and then working down. So like, I guess that would be a top-down hat. This one is made with a rectangle. So if you can imagine it, if you've never made one before, basically it's a rectangle of fabric, and then you seam the 2 sides together, and the width of that is the circumference of your head, and then the top of it gets cinched together after you seam the two sides. So the way this hat is constructed is actually pretty unique. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with crocheting hats at all, but I'm going to try to describe it to you because I don't have any that's in progress right now. But basically you crochet a lot of rows to where it measures the length of your head. So I guess like the circumference of your head is how long this fabric is going to be. So the height of the fabric is the measurement from the crown of your head down to below your ear. So that's just how long you want the hat to be so that it fits on your head. So that's the two different measurements that you need. And so it's like a rectangle. And then the two sides get seamed together. So then you have a tube of fabric. So at the top of the tube, you sew the sides together to cinch it up so that your hat closes at the top, and then you have an open end. Well, that's typically how you would do it if you made it out of a rectangle. Well, this one is constructed in the same exact way, with the exception of how you start the hat. So if you're familiar with a magic circle, you make a magic circle, which basically makes a big loop of yarn, and you can, not a big loop. So when I was in the research phase for this hat, I was trying to look for a stitch pattern, actually is what I was looking for. And I came across this YouTube tutorial, because YouTube is just the best for these things. And I came across the channel Rich Textures Crochet, which I will link her video below because she inspired me for how I made this hat actually, or how I started it anyway. So I came across Rich Textures Crochet, one of her videos, and I'm going to link it below because it was very helpful, and her hat pattern just looks awesome. It's for a men's beanie, as I think is what it's called, I don't know. But she shows you exactly how to do it. But anyway, how she starts it is she makes a chain of how long she needs the hat to be, but then she adds some extra, and then she makes a circle out of the extra chains, and then she continues the row down. So she has the circle of chains up here, and then she's making chains down, so kind of like this. She's chaining down, or she's crocheting down in rows, and when she gets back up, she just slip stitches into that circle. So when she's done, her rectangle of fabric is attached to the circle at the top, and all she has to do is sew the top together. She doesn't have to weave the yarn tail through the top to cinch it up like most hat patterns recommend, or like how most hat patterns are made when you use a giant rectangle. So I got the idea from her. Rather than using a circle of chains, I wanted to try the magic circle, which, if you don't know what that is, I am creating a video that shows you how to. But essentially, a magic circle is you make, instead of a slip knot, which is how you start most crochet projects, the magic circle is used for circular projects when you work in the round. Well, it makes a loop of yarn, but you can pull the tail and it gets smaller, or you can pull the yarn on the circle and it's going to get bigger. So what you do is the same concept as Rich Textures Crochet. Every time, so you make the circle and then you add the chains. So circle, and then you add the chain, and then you just continue up in rows, and every time you reach the magic circle, you slip stitch into it. So at the end, all of your rows of the hat, so the rectangle, is attached to that magic circle. So the magic happens at the end. All of your rows are attached to that magic circle at the top. So what you do is you pull the yarn tail that creates the magic circle, you pull it, and the top of your hat magically closes. and then you just have a tiny hole at the top that you just sew together, and then you can, it looks great just like it is, or you can add a pom-pom at the end. So I really fell in love with this method because it's so easy and it's so quick. You don't have to get your tapestry needle out and weave through the top. That's one of my least favorite parts. You just pull it closed and then you sew it. Make sure that it doesn't come undone. That's a unique way of making a hat out of a rectangle but attached to a magic circle. So I hope you will check out the pattern, at least a tutorial, which will come out after this video, because I show you exactly what I'm talking about and exactly how to do it. So I hope that that made sense on how the hat is constructed. So I talked about the yarn and I talked about how the hat is constructed. So let me talk a little bit about the inspiration for this hat. So about a week before my dad and I left for our camping trip, I had called him and he told me that he was planning on taking a camping trip, and my sister couldn't go, my brothers didn't want to go, my mom had to work. So he was just gonna go by himself. And I live in a different town or a different city than him. It's not that far away, but so whenever I called him and he told me that, I was like, I want to go. So I invited myself on his little camping trip, but he said he was going to ask me anyway. I had just beat him to it. I'm glad he allowed me to go with him because we had a blast. It was really nice to get away with him, just to spend a lot of time with him, and I just love being in the outdoors. It was a lot of fun going camping. So anyway, after I got off the phone with him, you know, the wheels in my head were turning. So I was trying to think of something that I could make either before we left or on the road trip, since we were going to be driving for 7 hours to get to South Fork, Colorado, which was our first destination. So, you know, I came up with a hat, and part of the reason is because, one, it's small. It's a great road trip project because you don't have to carry a ton of yarn with you, and you don't need a lot of room in the car to be able to make it. So that was a plus. Also, I was thinking of the backdrop of the woods and a campsite. I thought it would just be the perfect, it would just, you know, set the mood for the photos that I wanted to take for the hat. So I started researching different stitch patterns because I wanted to create a ribbed beanie because I love the knit ribbed look, but I wanted to make it crochet because I wanted it to be easier, or not easier, it'd be faster, because crochet comes faster for me than knitting. I've been crocheting way longer than I've been knitting, and I'm more familiar with it. So I wanted something that, I wanted a stitch pattern that looked knit, or that could look knit, but was actually crochet. So I came up, or not, I didn't come up with it actually. So I found the stitch pattern called half double crochet and the third loop, which is also known as the camel stitch. It's a really beautiful stitch pattern, I think. It looks like a knit 2 purl 1, if you're familiar with knitting at all. So the stitch pattern is just a 2-row repeat after you get done with the foundation part in the very beginning. And it's so easy and mindless. You just have to learn a new you just have to learn a new loop to half double crochet into. So if you know how to half double crochet, you're going to be set. It looks different and it is new if you've never done it before, but once you see it and see how it's made, oh my gosh, you're going to fall in love with it. It's so easy, and yeah, it's just mindless. It's a great road trip project, like I said. It'd probably be good, you know, just to watch a movie with if you want to finish it. And this is the result. You get a really nice ribbed beanie. And the great part about this is I chose to do a two-tone hat for this one. But you can do, I already showed you a couple of examples, and those were just solid colors. It looks great solid. And then this one I think looks good just like it is, or you can always, how I was wearing it actually in the beginning, you just flip up the bottom just for a folded brim. You just make it a little longer, and then you have a folded brim, and you have a nice hat. If you like the ribbed beanie look, this one's definitely a good pattern for that. So I hope you'll check out that tutorial, and I hope you'll check out my pattern as soon as it's released. And thank you for joining me in my first podcast episode. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing on the Weminuche Wilderness Trail, but I think it was a good idea. It gives a nice behind the scenes look at what I'm doing, and it gives me just time to talk about what patterns I'm working on, just to keep you guys updated. And if I didn't cover something that you are interested in for this pattern, just leave me a comment in the section below. I'd love to talk to you about it. This has become my favorite hat pattern, my favorite stitch pattern, my favorite way to start hats. I've fallen in love with everything about this hat, so I'm more than happy to talk about it if you have more questions. So feel free to ask me that. But I think I'm going to end the podcast here. I don't have much more to say about the hats. I'm going to leave you here with a little bit more footage from the hiking trail.
So I apologize for the noise right now, but I'm still in the Weminuche Wilderness, and there's the falls behind me, and it's just gorgeous. But we're headed out, me and my dad. We're almost done with the trail, and we're gonna head to Canyon City tonight. But I really hope that you like following me along, and I hope that you really like this hat pattern, which, by the way, I am naming it after the Weminuche Wilderness. It is the Weminuche hat. So be sure to look out for the tutorial that I am creating for this hat. And if you did like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more things like this. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you in the next episode.